Greetings. Hello. Welcome to Caregiver Chronicles Friday Night Live. Ask Dr. Yvette anything. Let me just tell you a little bit about Caregiver Chronicles. Caregiver Chronicles is a 16-module, 8-week online course in regard to caregiving. The courses cover all aspects of caregiving from the onset of your loved one's illness all the way until they transition or they recover from that illness. So tonight on Friday Night Live, Ask Dr. Yvette Anything, we have a special guest. This is an open discussion, an open forum where we talk about various aspects related to caregiving. Our topic tonight is community resources, and our guest is Dr. Donna Benton. She is a research associate professor of gerontology at the University of Southern California. She is also the director of the Family Caregiver Support Center at USC as well. And so I want to thank you, Dr. Benton, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
You're quite welcome. So Dr. Benton, caregiving is such a critical piece of life, if you will, for most people. And so being the director of the Family Caregiver Resource Center is a very important job. Not only is it an important job, but it's an important piece of the community, an important piece of the constituents and those who live in the surrounding areas of USC, because many of them are elderly and ailing. And so the topic for tonight is community resources and understanding those community resources. So in your words, Dr. Benton, if you could tell me, what is the importance of community resources in your eyes?
Well, you know, sometimes we really want to be able to be independent and do everything for ourselves or help our family, and we don't tend to look for other people's help outside of our own immediate family. Right. But just like if you need to go to a doctor because you've hurt your arm, or you may need an OT because you want to get some more exercise, or you go to a gym, well, being able to reach out to different organizations in your community that can help you, it helps strengthen your family. It helps strengthen your overall support system. So right. I think sometimes knowing what's in your community that could just take a little pressure off of you and add and enrich your caregiving and your family is very important. So I think that's really why I think of community and what's out there. And it's going to be a combination of not only family and friends, but community resources include maybe your church, and maybe the pharmacy, and your physician, and a social service agency, and your local grocery store and pharmacy, and all of these things are community resources. But when we're trying to care for somebody, we have to know when to bring them in and how to how to work with these community resources and coordinate them. You know, I also want to go back to what you had started saying is, you know, one of the things in our lives is Rosalind Carter, who was the Jimmy Carter's wife, said that there really are 4 types of people in the world: those who are caregivers, those who will need a caregiver, those who will become a caregiver, and those who are caregiving right now. So we have this, you know, she really divided the world up, and I think it's really and we don't tend to think of ourselves as caregivers. That's the first thing, is most caregivers, family caregivers, we don't identify as caregivers. Right. What we say is, well, that's my mom, or that's my dad, or a sibling.
Right. Yeah, caregiving is critical. I think in an illness, or when someone is, you know, has an affliction of some sort, that it is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, that one can have. Because if you are not familiar with the resources in the community, that are available to you, and I'll share with you about my experience with that as well as during our conversation. But if you're not aware of the resources that are in the community, then you don't have a clue about what to do when your loved one or even yourself become ill. And those resources could include insurance, they could include Social Security, they can include a lot of different things that are intertwined to ensure the safety and well-being of your loved one. And so I just wanted to bring that up. So there's so many types of resources, community resources, as you just mentioned. It can be the pharmacist, it can be the doctor. Those are resources. But I think for purposes of this segment tonight, we're more talking about agencies and different organizations or entities that are designed to provide resources and support to the sick and ailing population. So with that being said, what are some of the types of various community resources that you're aware of?
Well, I tend to think of either their social service resources, legal resources. I kind of put them in these buckets of medical, psychological, social, spiritual,
Right.
and so you have this biopsychosocial spiritual model, and so you can kind of group your resources that way. And then some are ones that are like your tax dollars at work.
Right.
Some are that you pay that you may pay a small fee or donations from. Some are local to your neighborhood. Some are national resources, and then they fall into like educational resources, resources that help with finances, resources that may help with more of the understanding and training. So like classes versus just a one-shot education course. So all of these are different types of resources. So depending on who you're caring for and what you're doing,
Right.
you are going to put together the resources differently.
Right.
You can tell me when you kind of want me to pause, and then I can talk a little more in depth. So, but that's the general category of resources.
Right. Right. So when I think about community resources, the things that come to mind is in-home supportive services, because that's a physical resource that is provided to the patient or the loved one, but it's based on income. They have to be basically low income to get it, and they have to be eligible for Medi-Cal in California and Medicaid in other states. And so
Right.
that resource is, I think, one of the most beneficial, especially for those who are low income, because most times those that don't have the financial resources to pay for a caregiver usually are at risk because they don't have, the means to do so. And so in-home supportive services is one of the most critical pieces. I think when my mom was ill, I wanted to get in-home supportive services for her, but she was at a fine line where her income was like maybe at a minimum, it was right above the threshold. And so that made it very difficult because she had an income. She was almost eligible for Medi-Cal, but she couldn't quite qualify for it at that time. Now they've changed the guidelines at this point. But at that point, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I ended up being very creative, if you will, using my resources, her resources, and whatever else I had to use to make sure that her care was paid for, because she got to a point where
Right.
she had to have 24-hour care in the home. And so that program was one of the programs that I wanted to have so badly, but I just could not get it. I mean, there's so many. When I think about community resources, I think about in-home support, I think about Meals on Wheels, I think about transportation. Those are some of the resources that are usually, are usually needed by those in the community.
Right. So um, I think the one thing about, like you mentioned, with what are called long-term care services and supports is many times we make the mistake if we don't know that Medicare will pay for. Oh, Medicare will pay for that. Well, Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care.
Right.
And so most of us, and most people are not really, the bulk of the population is not going to qualify for IHSS. It's a wonderful program, if, as you said, if you can qualify for it.
Right.
But if you've generally worked, have some savings, you can sometimes the older adult can spin down, or the disabled person can spin down
Right.
their savings, but you have to actually spin down into poverty in order to get. And sometimes you can't if you have a pension, or really, it may take longer than you need. So that's when it becomes important to understand how to use other resources in the community to help stretch your finances. So being able to make sure that sometimes choosing the right insurance program for your loved one, where maybe they were getting Medicare and um, they were using a standard Medicare. But if you look at programs that are more wraparound HMO programs, for like a Medicare Plus program or something like that, that might actually provide some of that long-term care that your loved one needs. It might be able to provide the pay for things that traditional Medicare won't pay for, like depends, or ongoing therapy, being able to help with transportation costs. Now, since COVID, some of the health plans are even providing nutrition. So they're actually contracting to bring in meals for people,
Right.
because
Right.
they're understanding that there's a need for what are called social determinants of health.
Right.
And that means that they're actually helping with transportation and food, housing. So all of these other things, some are actually starting to be under some health plans. And so if your loved one doesn't qualify for Medi-Cal,
Mhm.
then you want to look for the best insurance program that can cover some of those gaps, so that you don't have to spend as much money out of your pocket and the pocket of the person that you care for, so you can stretch your savings a little longer. The
Right.
other thing, and of course we'll talk about my program too at some
Yes,
point, but
definitely. Definitely, because I was actually a part of your program, so we definitely have to talk about that. Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
So, but the other thing, of course, is advanced planning helps too, so that if you work with a legal specialist, you
Mhm.
can maybe find ways to make sure that your savings will allow you to, if you get into the situation where you're going to need some long-term care, maybe you look at long-term care insurance. And most of it is not affordable right now for most people, but the state is looking at programs for long-term care insurance. So you could look for that if somebody needs long-term care, so that you pay for an outside giver the besides the usual informal care, which is most people have informal care. But if you also need some additional help or some respite from time to time. So you can have the legal resources. I always think it's very important to look for within your network. Sometimes you can get a volunteer, or within your church, or somebody who, when you're caring for somebody, maybe there's someone else who can go do your grocery shopping for you. Or now, of course, everything is delivered, so it's a little
Right.
easier. Life has actually changed a lot since
Yes.
COVID,
Yes, it has.
but before it wasn't as easy to get your groceries delivered, or pharmacy. But if you need those things picked up, having somebody else who can do that for you
Yes.
is really good, of course. And now we have more delivery services, but sometimes they charge, so you still may need that a network of other people to help you out when you can.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so having that support network, and then making sure that as a family caregiver, that you have time away. And so that's where I guess we can talk about respite
Talk about
later on.
here, yeah, we'll definitely get on that. But I wanted to just backtrack because you mentioned about insurance, and it's something because some of the insurance agencies or companies now are offering gym memberships. And I was like, okay, that's good because we all need to go to the gym, but Well, now with the COVID, that puts a whole different light on everything. So, but I know when I heard, I said, well, they're offering gym memberships at these, these insurance companies, which is great. Delivery services, those are resources too in the community that are important. If you are, and those of you who are listening in, if you have a question or comment, please type it in the chat and we'll be happy to respond to you. And answer your concern or question. Yeah, so, resources are just so important, and there are so many types of resources. I think it's important to be able to tailor the resource to the person because there are many resources, but do you know what resources are appropriate for your loved one? That's critical.
Right.
I'll share my experience is that when my mother got sick, well, she had Alzheimer's disease. I don't know if I told you, Dr. Benton, that she was I was her caregiver for 9 years, and so when she got sick, I had to learn everything. I had
Right.
to learn everything about caregiving. I had to learn about insurance. I had to learn about managing her house, managing her everything, and my 3 sons as well. So what I'm saying that to say is that I didn't know about in-home support services. I didn't know about Meals on Wheels. I didn't know about transportation. I didn't know about anything related to caregiving. So in that 9-year time span, I had to learn every single day what the resources were. Okay.
Right.
And so the reason why Caregiver Chronicles is so critical, the online courses, is because it includes every aspect of caregiving. Okay. It goes from the onset of your loved one's illness all the way until they transition. It includes everything. We have a segment
Right.
of community resources, everything. And so it was critical for me because I was like, okay, I had no clue. And I know there are
Yeah.
so many people that their loved one gets sick or they have an illness and they were like trying to figure it out. They're scrambling, trying to figure it
Right.
out. And nobody's going to come and give you everything. They're not going
No.
to come and say all of these resources are necessary for your loved one. It's rare
Yeah.
if you
It's
find.
rare, and usually people, there's from research and has shown that most people they start with their physician because
Right,
most of the time they're kind of asking their physician. Well, the physician, some physicians are better than others at understanding where to refer somebody for social service or community resources.
right.
So one of the resources that if you kind of want to find the best way to get a comprehensive resource, that's kind of like going to a resource center, like the Caregiver Resource Center.
Yes, yes.
So, like for us, if you come to us, well, we're going to do that individualized care plan with you
Hmm. Hmm.
that will then get you to all of the resources because we'll say, okay, you're talking about now you're having to pay your mom's bills. Okay, so then have you talked to somebody about making sure you have power of attorney? Do
Hmm.
you know how to set up banking things? And so, you want the place where you can learn those kind of things, or do you need a course in that? Let's get you a class. Or maybe we hear, oh, it sounds like you might need some home modification. You're going to have a wheelchair, or
Right,
you need to have a walk. You may need to change the bathroom a little, and so there's a resource for that. But and we may think, oh, I have to pay for that. Well, no, maybe if you go through the area agency on aging, your
right,
relative may qualify to have home modifications. And so there might be a way to, offset some of that cost.
right. The
Knowing
hand
who to
program.
talk to and where to connect. And the resources change from year to year.
That's right.
Some are very steady. Most of the time, your state and county resources are going to be the same year to year. There's like a packet that you'll usually is usually there. But with, like, say now with COVID, so
Hmm.
many resources are being cut.
Hmm.
So even those that we would say were normally very stable are under threat of cuts for meal services and transportation services. So all of those, but usually if you start with the area agencies on aging, your caregiver resource center,
Hmm.
those are your state county agencies. If say you're like your mom in your mom's case, you're discussing Alzheimer's disease or maybe it's Parkinson's or something, linking up in addition to your caregiver resource centers and your area agencies on aging, linking to the disease organization, because many of the associations, they have a lot of resources that can also help you. And sometimes they have specialized grants.
Mm-hmm.
Just because your relative has Alzheimer's, or just because your relative has Parkinson's, or maybe it's ALS. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother set. So it's always good to, and remember, you use more than one resource. It's not like, oh, I can only use Alzheimer's Association, and oh, I can only go to the senior
Everything,
center.
everything
You use them all.
right, right.
You join them all. You get on everybody's mail list.
Yes.
I
Right.
think the biggest thing is sometimes people feel like, oh, I can only be wedded to one program.
Mm-hmm.
No, you sign up for everybody's program. You get on everybody's mail list.
Right.
You get to your local church. You make sure you have your pharmacy, and you have a backup pharmacy, and you have, and your physician is there. The hospitals sometimes have resources where you can go and you can call. Well, now everything you can call in or go online, and of course online now there's just a lot like what you're doing, Dr. Jackson.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
You
ma'am.
can get more. The other thing is sometimes if you're truly, maybe you're working, you don't have a lot of time, you could look for what's called a case management agency. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that are going to, um, they will, for a fee usually, if it's a private case management, or if you go to like a caregiver resource center, then there's not a fee,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but they will actually guide you through, and um, they're kind of like your own guide,
Right.
your personal
Your navigate
guide to finding resources.
the navigator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're your own little navigator. That's a
Right.
yeah, and we have family care navigators in our program.
Mm-hmm.
You let me know when I can talk about my program.
You will trust me. We're going to definitely talk about that. So I wanted to just go over. You said stated, and you know what, the COVID has made such a impact on our economy that people are losing their jobs. So that means at some point it's going to start affecting the government programs, because
Right.
it's going to have a ripple effect. And so, you know, it's so unfortunate that the people who need the services the most are going to feel the brunt of the impact of this COVID-19. Um,
And that's not inevitable.
no,
Part of that is, you know, telling your elected officials not to do, because there's other places they can cut besides the easier, what they always feel are the easier social service cuts, because people don't speak up for
right.
it because they're so
They do.
usually invisible. But you can actually speak up, and before these things happen, and say, you know what, these long-term care programs and transportation programs and meal programs, well, those need more funding
Yeah.
than, say, you know what, I don't want to pay for another opera house or whatever, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, so there are some other resources that we didn't mention, but I know there's in-home support. There's Meals on Wheels. You know, there's Project Angel Food. You
Hmm.
know, Meals on Wheels, you have to be low income. Project Angel Food, you have to have a specific diagnosis. You have to be,
Right.
you know, like you have to have HIV. You have to be, you know, HIV
Right.
positive. You have to have
Hmm.
end-stage renal disease. There are specific diagnoses that you have to get that particular lunch program. There's
Right.
transportation, there's access, there's dollar ride, there's the
And you
handyman,
have to be a certain age for that, for those programs,
right? A certain age or have a certain disability,
or disability.
right?
Right.
So if you have a specific disability, or you know you're unable to navigate the public transportation systems, you're
Hmm.
eligible or able to you know, be a part of, you know, that program. And then, you know, it's just a lot. Now if you're Medicare and Medi-Cal too, you do have I believe you have an option to use transportation through Medi-Cal at this point, because they have adjusted that program where you can take some of that
Right.
insurance and have, I think you have about, I'm not sure how many, but in the year's time, you have so many transportation, you know, services that you can use throughout the year. So that's also
Mm-hmm.
important. So see, these
Mm-hmm.
are things that people don't know. And a lot of times, and this is honest
Right.
speaking, Dr. Benton, a lot of times when you go to someone and you want to get someone who's going to give you a complete overview, a complete outline of resources that are available to you, 9 times out of 10, you are not going to get that. And I'm just being honest. I'm not saying that because of Caregiver Chronicles, but 9 times out of 10, when you go see a person about resources that you need, they may not even know about certain resources that you need. And so that's why it's so
Right.
critical to have another source. And so that's why I'm putting in the plug for Caregiver Chronicles. But honestly speaking, resources are critical for the well-being of
Mm-hmm.
a loved one. And so I just wanted to say that. So let's talk about the LA Caregiver Resource Center.
Oh,
Now let me,
sure.
before you talk about it, I'm going to tell you my experience about it because mom, she had Alzheimer's disease and she had gotten, I think I put her on the waiting list. I'm going to say maybe about 2 years before she passed because they had a waiting
What,
list at that time at the
a
LA
waiting list for what?
for the LA Caregiver Resource Center to get a stipend for respite care.
Oh, no, but that wasn't for your mom. That's for you.
Well, it was a
You
well,
were the client.
but
Your mom,
she was the
yeah.
the person that the application was for because it was for her care, to
No,
respite care for her.
no, it was for you.
Okay, but let me say this because what I did was she was on the waiting list and her name was on there because it was her, she was the patient, so her name was on the waiting list. And then what
I wonder,
happened was I called them and I told them, I said this was about maybe 6 months or 8 months before she passed. And I said, I'm calling to see if my mom's name is up on the list. I said my mother, needs help, and she was bedridden at that time. She was vegetative state at that time. I said I
Mhm.
need some help, and what they told me was what the I don't know who the lady was. You said we were going to find out who she was, but she said, well, your mom is almost up on the list, so we'll let you know when her name is on the list or when she's up, right? And I told her, I said, you know what? I said my mother's going to be dead before you guys help me. And she called me back the next day, and she had a stipend for me to help with my mother's care. And I'll never forget that. I tell other people this all the time because sometimes you may not know, but if you say something to somebody, then they will get it and they'll say, okay, I got to do something. So whatever I said to her, it must have clicked with her that day because she made sure the next day I got a call and that stipend was available. So that was the beauty of the LA Caregiver Resource Center. I refer people to it when they call me about caregiving, they need help, they need respite care. I said, call the Resource Center because they will have that resource for you. So if you want to talk about that program, Dr. Benton, please do so.
Sure. So let me tell you, and the reason I kept correcting you is that you make the same mistake that most caregivers do.
Okay,
They think that the client is their parent, and it isn't.
right.
It's actually the caregiver. So when you called and you happened to mention your mom's name, it was actually you, unless your mother happened to have been taking care of somebody before, and then she had been our client, then her name would have been as our client. But actually, our services are for the family caregiver.
Mhm.
So if you're caring for your mother or your father or a sibling, when you call, we're there for you, the caregiver. And all the services are geared for you.
Right, they're
Now, of
respite
course,
services.
we well, no, we have more than respite. I mean, we have
Okay,
that our services is actually the case management. So I'll just go through the services.
okay, because
So and kind of give you an idea.
okay, so let me put it in context because when I did this was 2000. Okay, so that was quite a long time ago. Maybe things have changed since then. So please tell us about the program.
Oh, sure. So the center, when you call, everything starts with a phone call, or now you can go online.
Okay,
And you can live anywhere in LA County. We
okay,
serve all of LA County. And that's why it's easy when I always say, you don't have, it doesn't matter where you live. There's a resource center by you because we do everything by phone or online. And then we're part of a statewide system of caregiver centers. So we've been doing this since 1996.
Okay.
And the caregiver, or actually before that, what am I saying? We're going on 30 years now.
Okay.
So the we're part of a statewide system. So if you happen to live anywhere in California as a caregiver, you can qualify for our services. It's a state, we have state funding. When you were going, we probably just had state funding.
Okay.
And that means that that's your state tax dollars at work, but there's no income restrictions for our program.
Right.
Because we know the family caregivers they could be working, you could be retired, and the program and services aren't based on income in any way. And even now, we also have a county program, and that's targeted more for low income, but it's still for the client is the caregiver. So if you're caring for your mom, your dad at any stage, you can call us, and as long as they have some kind of brain impairing condition, so like Alzheimer's or ALS or
Yeah.
Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury,
Right.
or they could have, if they're older, they could have you could be multiple medical problems like a stroke or something.
Right.
And then what we do after that phone call is we ask you a lot of questions. People sometimes say, why are you asking all these questions? All I want is respite. Well, most people think that's all they want, but that's not the only service that we're going to provide, because we have to understand how we can get you to all those other community services.
Okay.
And so that's where our first level of service is having that interview with you and the family care navigator.
Okay.
So when someone calls, they talk to the information and resource specialist, who gets a general idea of who you're caring for and a little bit about who you are. And then you're assigned to a family care specialist or family care navigator. And that family care navigator then does a more personalized, in-depth interview with you, the caregiver, to find out what are your goals? Are you working? How are you feeling? What's your health like? Who are you caring for? What's their health like? What kind of what challenges do you have? What do you like about your caregiving?
Okay.
And so it's a real comprehensive, because you know sometimes you said, who's going to do that comprehensive interview? We
Right.
have to do that comprehensive interview, and from that interview, we then figure out, do you need legal services? Because you've called for respite, but we're going to check to make sure that you understand what your legal options are.
Okay.
What are the nutritional needs that are out there?
Okay.
What's going to be for respite? And the respite is for you,
Right.
so that you can take a break from your caregiving.
Right.
But that's just the respite for if you go somebody to come and take a break. But we also teach you the concept of respite. So that's why we have a lot of conferences on self-care and self-help, and training programs. So we have powerful tools for caregivers, and stress busters, and savvy caregiver, and different education programs. And so as a caregiver, what we tend to forget is, if our cup is empty, we can't give
You can't pour
anymore.
from an empty cup. That's right.
You, you
That's right.
can't pour from an empty cup. And
Right.
so our goal is to help you plan for your entire caregiving journey, because usually, like you said, you were 7 years. So you may call us in the beginning and need one set of services, but then you can call your family care navigator a year later and say, the doctor, my mom, before she was able to chew, but now she's having problems. What should I do? And if I've talked to the doctor, but I don't know, do you know anything where I can find special diets? Well, then you can call your navigator, and you guys can look for special, she can look for special here, she can look for special diets for you, or figure out where some good resources, or, let's look for blenders or stuff like that. So it becomes really important. It's that relationship with your family care navigator
Right.
that lets you have someone to call. We also run support groups.
Okay.
And I think that one thing that caregivers don't often do is take the time to have somebody else outside their immediate family
Right.
to say, okay, I just want to talk to somebody else who understands what I'm going through on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Right. That's
So we have different support groups.
so
And I
important.
think that that's a place so important. And
Hmm.
not everybody, say, oh, I don't want to be around a bunch of people who are always complaining about stuff. But actually, support groups, you learn a lot of resources in support groups.
Hmm.
You learn different ways to cope. You learn different skills, like because somebody may have already be just that little bit ahead of you
Right.
in how they're caring for their parent and have a suggestion that you never thought of. It's
Yes.
like,
Right.
oh, well, have you tried singing this song? And guess what? If you sing this song, sometimes that'll calm her down. Or have you tried doing this way
Right.
to change the food? And
Yes.
so it's so important, I think, the support groups. And so we always say try 3 support groups. And
Okay.
we offer lots of different support groups because it's the mix of people in the support groups that becomes important for you as a person.
Right.
So we say try it 3 times. Give it 3 times. You can just listen in. You can always not go.
Hmm.
So we have the support groups. We have courses uh, that can help you with planning. We do legal referrals so that you can make sure that if you get wills and things in place
Yeah.
and understand how to make decisions for your relative, so that either formally or informally, and what are your obligations, and
Right.
how to do finances and understanding around housing.
Hmm.
We have 30 years and more of information online,
Hmm.
of materials that are vetted to make sure that that these materials are very up to date, and we work and collaborate with organizations so that we make sure that we keep up on the latest information. Like right now, California just expanded paid leave so that more people can qualify for paid leave, but also it added job protection. And before, you didn't have job protection. So if you're working, it's really changed it's gotten better in terms of how you can work and provide caregiving.
Is
And knowing
is
how
that
to take
FMLA you're
intermittent
speaking about?
leave.
Is that FMLA you're
I'm
speaking
sorry.
about? Is that FMLA you're speaking?
No, that's not FM.
No.
No, not FMLA. We're
Okay.
talking California paid family leave.
Okay.
FMLA, you can take at the same time, but California, you can actually just have, now it's what will be January 21st, 8 weeks of paid leave that's now job protected,
Okay.
just to
Great.
care for your relative,
Right.
which is different than FMLA.
Okay.
So, I mean, and that's California started that in 2000. We got paid family leave passed, but a lot of caregivers are not of working caregivers are not aware, and we still have and Los Angeles actually has the lowest rate of use of paid family leave
Right.
compared to anywhere else in the state.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and it's only partial job replacement, but depending on your income, the job replacement rate can be higher. It can go up to, like, now it goes up to 75%,
Hmm.
and the lowest is 60%.
Okay.
So these are the kind of things when you work with your family consultant, they're going to help you get through that because they're going to come up with a care plan. And then you just stay with them. You stay with us as long as we've had people that have been with us who are maybe caring for somebody with a traumatic brain injury and they're very young, who
Right.
are with us for 20 years or more.
Hmm.
The respite is something that um, our respite funds have gone up and down with the economy.
Okay.
Um, so we're able to maintain our education programs, our support groups, our family consultants, which are the heart of our service
Hmm.
for people.
Hmm.
The funding for direct pay for respite, which means it just allows you a small break so that you can sleep,
Hmm.
sometimes just sleep, not have to, feel like you can relax, because that's our goal, is to give you, the caregiver, a way to relax for a little while.
Okay.
And so if you get that respite grant, that can come through. We have more respite funds right now because the economy for a while was doing better, and we were able to get an augmentation So we're able to expand our program, and part of our expansion was just before COVID is we've moved everything. All of our services are already online, and we were already using the phone before
Okay.
to provide services. So that has not changed. Um, so you get this comprehensive, I mean, that's why we're called, I always think of us as we're the one-stop shopping center for caregivers. And then we're going to link
Mhm.
to your program. We're going to link to, we'll say, oh, well, we can't do that, but have you talked to Dr. Jackson? Have you talked to the Alzheimer's Association? Because as I said, it's not one program that you use. We want to make sure you use everything that's available out there. And we don't know where that information is going to come from.
Right, right. So you talked about the respite grant. Tell me a little bit about that as far as, say for instance, I have my loved one. I know you only deal with brain deficits. Is that correct? Brain injuries, or is it any like if I?
Unless you're over 65, if you're the person you're caring for,
Uh-huh.
if you're caring for somebody and you're over 65, then you can we can also do some of the physical. So if they have, as long as they have, if you're caring for somebody with two or more um, impairments, physical impairments.
Okay. So it doesn't matter about the brain injury. It could be a physical impairment. So if I'm handicapped as far as an amputee, they're okay for you.
No, no, that's not an amputee.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
No, this is going to be an older adult, probably maybe because you're caring for them because they have a stroke,
Right.
or they may not have any cognitive impairment, but they have severe arthritis, and you're trying to help them through that. Yeah,
Okay. So
or maybe you know different. That one is going to be a little. It depends on the person's age. So
okay.
that one, just a slightly different criteria. But most people call us because they're caring for somebody who has some kind of brain impairment,
Okay. Yeah, because that's what I recall. It
but
being
not behavioral, not depression, or
yeah.
not just a behavioral problem.
Right. Right. Okay. So the respite grant is a program where you provide respite care for those caregivers who are caring for those who have some type of brain impairment or cognitive impairment. How is the grant disseminated? Is there a specific amount you give for a specific ailment, or is there a specific amount that you would give based on
It's
the needs
it's
of?
part of that so you have to gone through the assessment.
Right.
That's the key thing. You have to have gone through the assessment.
Okay.
And through the assessment, your care navigator is going to determine what your needs are
Okay.
for respite.
Okay. So they'll fit.
So people need different amounts. And then we have a cap that we can't go above in terms of what the county or the state will allow us to give somebody as far as a grant. But every grant is individualized.
Okay. So may I ask what the cap is?
But it's short term. So it's usually somewhere around the maximum is usually somewhere between like 1,000 to maybe $3,600.
Okay, so 1,000 to 3,600. Okay, that's not bad at all. Look, mine was 800.
Depending on which, but that's really depends on. I
The
mean, that's why you have to go through the assessment, because then they can determine which grant you qualify for, and how long and how many hours, and how much we can work. And then of course, as I said, unfortunately our respite, we do have a long everybody, usually most people who qualify for our services, they usually are determined to need some kind of respite.
right.
But at some point now, many people will be on our respite list and they'll say, I don't need it right now, when we call them. And because you may not feel stressed right then, you may not feel that you need a break right then. So I don't, I'd rather wait till I feel like I really need it. So the list kind of, it's when people are ready. And then of course there are emergencies like you called. So that's really always discussed with the family care navigator. So
Okay.
our primary service is that family care navigator. and the relationship you have with the family care navigator, and they're going to help determine all of the packets of services that we can get you. And sometimes the respite grant may not be from us. If
No.
we can't do it and we happen to have, because in different years, different agencies will say, oh, we have money this year, or we're giving out respite to people who have Parkinson's,
Okay.
or we're going to give grants to people who need a wheelchair or something. And we'll hear about that. And then, they'll like call, like, hey, guess what? We just got this. We heard about this special fund pot of money that's going out.
Right.
Let's get on it.
Right. So let me just put the plug in again, if I may. So Caregiver Chronicles is not only in state of California, we cover all states. So I just wanted to bring that up, because I know you're only covering LA County, but Caregiver Chronicles is,
in California.
And we cover all states, okay?
Right.
The courses that we have are available to you in any state. If there's someone who has a question or comment, please type it in the chat and we will be happy to respond to you. So another resource that is in the state and other states as well is 211, the information line. And that's a critical, important piece of caregiving, because you can always call.
Absolutely.
And if you have need for a resource or some direction or guidance, they will give it to you. And so I wanted to bring that up. It's a taxonomy of services that are, available to you to get information. And so you can dial 211, and that is in any state as well. And so
and they're different 211s throughout through in every state, and there's also area agencies on aging in every state. Okay. So the Department of Aging and the area agencies on aging, of which we have one of the grants in California, they have what are called the caregiver services too. So every state has a program like ours.
Agency on agency.
Which are through the area agencies on aging. Now they may be called something else, but if you go on the main national website, you can look up an area agency on aging for your state.
Okay.
And then what you're going to be asking for is their caregiver support program, which is called 3E.
3E.
But that's, so in case you call and they go, I don't know what you're talking about, say, I want the caregiver support program, because if you don't say caregiver support, they might be giving you support for your loved one, but then you could qualify for more support because they can give you as a caregiver support. So you can actually get the things that come for your loved one, like meals and IHSS and all of that. And then when you say, I need support as a caregiver, then you could get additional respite and meals and others and services, so that you actually can use both what your relative gets and what you get. Okay. But you've got to say the word that I'm a caregiver. So that's another reason to actually understand that there's services for your loved one and there's services for you. So when you call our center, we're giving the services for you and we link you to the services for your loved one.
Okay. All right.
So that kind of doubles your pot, but most people only call for the services for their loved one, and they're missing out
on the respite,
on something that could extend the services over here.
Right. Because really, to be honest, the person that's getting the help is the patient. The patient is usually always taken care of most times, and the person that's really experiencing the most stress is the caregiver. And so now they sometimes caregivers even pass before the patient does. And that's so unfortunate. There's a husband taking care of his wife that's ill, and he is driving himself into the ground, trying to do his best to take care of his loved one. And that's why it's critical, whatever the case may be, that you seek help. If you need help, if you have one, if you're caring for someone, don't feel like you don't need help. Even if it's your parent, even if it's your loved one, even if it's your sibling, whoever it is, it's stressful. Even if you have 10 caregivers going in there each and every day, you watching your loved one slowly deteriorate and you cannot do anything about it to stop that deterioration, it is stressful. So
Right.
you could just be overseeing the caregivers. It's still just as stressful.
Right.
So just
And that's what makes it difficult is because some people say, well, I have caregivers, but no, all that management, like you're saying, that can be stressful.
yes,
And also you have your own emotional, what you're going through because your loved one is you're watching somebody fade away.
you can't do
You're
anything.
missing. You have your own grief process that you're going through.
Right. That's
And you need somebody to support you through that grief process. I
right.
think that's why it's important for you to get someone to have somebody help support you. So many times, we always find that the caregivers are surprised when we say, "How are you doing?
Right.
What can we do for you?"
Right.
Because they're like, "Well, I'm not sick." Well,
Yeah, you.
okay, let me be a shoulder for you. Let
Right.
me let me hold you up a little bit from time to time.
Right.
I think that's it. So when you call for services, yes, we usually call and talk about the services, but if you don't, and unfortunately, the way social service systems work is you have to use the right words.
Right.
So that's why I keep emphasizing that if you don't call yourself a family caregiver, you're not going to get family caregiver services.
Right. That's a good statement to make, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anticipatory grief is the process you're talking about when you are watching
Mm,
one deteriorate and you cannot do
mm-hmm.
about it, then you have the anticipation of grief because you know that the ultimate is coming. They are going to
Yeah.
succumb or pass on at some point or another. And so I just wanted to bring that term up as well. So, Dr. Benton, uh, anyone on the line have any questions or comments, please let us know. I don't see anything in the chat, so we're good there. But if you have a comment and you want to join in, just let us know. I want to just do a recap. We talked about the importance of community resources. It's very important that you, even if you don't know, that you begin to seek what resources are in your community because you want to make sure that you have a knowledge base so that when the need arises for a specific resource, you are able to tap into it. So that is important. Ask questions. Don't feel like you can't say anything. A lot of times when
Mm,
the doctor, they won't say nothing because they don't want the doctor to think that they're asking too many questions. Well, guess what? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to question them. You're supposed to ask for a second opinion.
yeah.
You're supposed to do what's best for you and for your loved one. So please ask questions if you have them. And then we talked about the various types of community resources. We talked about Ms. Rosalind Carter. Was it Jimmy Carter's wife? The four categories. And either they are a caregiver or they need a caregiver or they will become a caregiver or they are currently a caregiver. So those are the four categories that Dr. Benton mentioned. We talked about social services. We talked about Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is in California. Medicaid is in other states. If you are Medi, you have Medicare and Medi-Cal or Medicaid, then you are covered across the board for most resources. So I wanted to bring that up as well. Insurance is important. Different types of insurance have different resources, and we talked about the fact that some of the insurance companies they have transportation included, they have gym memberships included. So those are some of the things that you want to take a look at when you are selecting insurance for your loved one. We talked about
Yeah,
delivery.
and sometimes they'll add dental, or that might help you for dental, or they'll have more physical therapy, and they'll have social services. Sometimes they have caregiver services
Right. Yes.
as part of the
Some
insurance. So
long,
I'm gonna stop my video for a second because I forgot to put my plug in on my thing, and I just don't want to run out. So I'm here. I can hear you, and then I'm gonna just get my plug.
Okay, I'm going to continue the recap while Dr. Benton gets a plug. And so we talked about insurance, we talked about delivery services. Those of you who are at home and you may need help, you can always try to get delivery services for yourself. We talked about in-home support services, Meals on Wheels, Project Angel Food, transportation. We talked about state funding. We talked about support groups. I believe Dr. Benton's program has support groups that are critical for caregivers as well. We talked about respite grants. We also talked about 211, which is the information line that's available in most states to provide you with resources as well. I want to just tell you again about Caregiver Chronicles. It is an online course. We cover all states. It's in every state. If you need the services, you need information, we go from advanced directives. We cover every piece of caregiving because it's important that you have one particular resource that you can go to get all the help that you need. And we also have private consultations, so you can meet with myself to discuss, certain areas that you may not want to discuss online. If you're interested, please visit the website. The website for Caregiver Chronicles is www.caregiverchronicles247.com, or you can email me, caregiverchronicles247@gmail.com. And then you can always, the phone number is there. You can always schedule an appointment. You can click on the link in the website and schedule a private consultation with me. And then I'll be happy to work with you and talk with you about how we can help you and your loved one. Dr. Benton, I want to know if you can give a overall general statement to the group, and then we will close out. I thank you so much for joining us tonight. Your information is invaluable, and I thank you. So if you would, talk about, your program and just close us out with that.
So first of all, our program, please, you can look for our program online, which is under FC as in Charles, S as in Sam, C, GERO, FCSC, GERO.edu. Or sometimes it's just easier to do 1-800-540-4442. Or you can just Google USC Family Caregiver Support Center. So there's three letters. So many times I always say just put it in Family Caregiver Support Center and you'll find us. I think that as Dr. Jackson was saying, learning about community resources is very critical. I really appreciate you putting together this education and webinar, but it always comes down to if you see one caregiving family, you've seen one caregiving family. And so as Dr. Jackson is pointing out, being able to have somebody who can get you through that journey and using individualized services is so important, and having somebody who understands the system. So I'm so glad that you were able to benefit from our services.
Yes.
And I'm sure that people can benefit from your continued work in this area, because there aren't enough. 1 out of every 5 households have family caregivers.
Yes.
And we just don't have enough people who specialize in helping caregivers. So we're really very appreciative of your help in the area. So between Dr. Jackson and our program, I think that caregivers will be in good hands. But first of all, you have to identify as a family caregiver.
Right.
So, and know that you're doing the best you can with the information that you have right now, and give yourself a big pat on the back.
Right, right. Thank you, Dr. Benton. So let me just say this again. If you are a caregiver, say something. Ask questions. Don't feel like you cannot talk about what's going on, because there are many people out there that just, they fall by the wayside because they don't say nothing. So please do so. We love you guys. Thank you for joining us tonight on Caregiver Chronicles, Friday Night Live, Ask Dr. Yvette Anything. We will be back next Friday. Our platform is an open forum where you can talk about anything related to caregivers. I look forward to seeing you. Take care, and yes, have a good evening. Thank you, Dr. Benton. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.